Let's take a look at your market news now. China shares settled higher on Wednesday after the country's biggest listed banks posted solid first quarter profits and as investors saw signs of lockdown easing. But lingering worries over the coronavirus pandemic capped gains. At the close, the Shanghai Composite Index was up 0.44% at 2,822 points. Japan's Nikkei Index closed down 0.06% at 19,771 points. And so far, the Shanghai Stock Index is down 7.5%. Wall Street's major indexes lost ground on Tuesday as investors moved out of market-leading growth stocks through a rotation into cyclical value. Stocks indicated hopes of economic revival as states began to relax restrictions enacted to fight the deadly COVID-19 pandemic. While technology stocks pulled all three major U.S. stock indexes into the red, they all remained within 20% of their February all-time highs. First quarter earnings season has shifted into high gear with S&P 500 earnings now expected to be down 14.8% from a year ago. That's a dramatic turn from the 6.3% year-on-year growth seen in January. The U.S. Federal Reserve convenes its two-day monetary policy meeting to contend with crushing joblessness and an ailing economy. Consumer confidence also plunged in April, with the current conditions component suffering its largest drop ever. The S&P 500 posted 13 new 52-week highs and one new low. The Nasdaq Composite recorded 54 new highs and 2 new lows. Let's take a look at the rest of the markets. Let's take a closer look at the markets with Michael Trahan. He's at Vestec Asset Management. Michael, a very good afternoon to you. Still so much unknown about the coronavirus, and of course that unknown element seeps into the market and how people invest.
Yeah, for sure. So at the moment it's all speculation, and the market's been driven by what the market thinks is going to happen, and that's roughly what you would call a V recovery or a U-shaped recovery. If we see something that's a bit more drawn out, that takes longer, if this lockdown lasts longer than expected, global markets are going to suffer, and unfortunately the JSE won't be excluded from that.
Let's go to the United States. The U.S. Fed has a rate decision expected tonight. Do we know what they're going to say?
Yeah, as far as the rate decisions go this year, this is probably going to be fairly uneventful. Leading into the virus, the U.S. Fed had emergency meetings where they had really cut the interest rates quite aggressively. So we're not expecting any cuts from the Fed. Also, the Fed has intervened in U.S. bond markets, buying up trillions of dollars worth of government debt to help keep long-term interest rates down. So we're not expecting any major action from the Fed this afternoon, but what analysts will be doing, being a close eye on what the Fed's general comments are, how it's dealing, what are its forecasts, and that then feeds through into the market.
Speaking of bond markets, we know that South Africa is leaving some of the major bond markets because of that last recent downgrade. And the rand has had a rally against the dollar in the last 3 weeks or so. Are we going to now see losses following the leaving of those indexes?
Yeah, it looks like more than likely going into the new month, we'll see us leaving those indexes, which effectively means you've got forced sellers of our debt. Those forced sellers, they need to remove their holdings from rands into dollars or into euros or pounds, wherever they're based. More than likely, we will probably see a weaker currency for a short while. And then let's see what happens from there. I think that's where most of the shocks that have already been factored in. I have been reading that there are a lot of bond investors sitting on the sidelines waiting for the institutional investors to leave so that they can jump in and buy in their stead, take advantage of our very high interest rates. Our 10-year interest rates are close to about 11%, 12%, where global markets at the moment are around 1%. So South African debt looking very appealing at these very high interest rate levels.
Okay, let's talk about Brent spot prices. We saw them rising this morning, trading at about $19 a barrel. What's happening now?
Yeah, lots of uncertainty as well in that market. The big problem there is what happens with storage. Everyone's happy to buy Brent at very low prices, but where do you store it? How cheap or expensive is that storage? General on-land cheaper storage is starting to fill up very quickly. It means that people now need to start renting oil tankers, which are a lot more expensive. And that's the question, how do you store it? So Brent's being very volatile at the moment. That's a sign of uncertainty, and who knows what tomorrow holds.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at company news now. We saw Google yesterday announcing their first quarter results. How has COVID-19 affected the work that they do? And then what was the share price looking like after those results?
Yeah, so Google is effectively an advertising company. I mean, all the things that they provide to you are free. They make their money through the advertising linked to the services that they provide. So that saw a slight increased revenue over the last year's time, which was good news. The bad news is they said in March they saw a very steep drop-off in advertising revenues, and that's probably expected to last for the next few quarters. They did say the positive news, though, is that the drop-off did stabilize, but continued drop-off as the month went on. But what we'll really see is what happens between April and June. And that will be the key factors, almost the post-lockdown time. What does it look like spending? But investors very happy with the numbers. Stock actually up 8% in the market, showing that the investors were pleasantly surprised by the numbers.
Mm-hmm. British American Tobacco, their share price was up about 4.4% this morning. What does it have to do with that? And is the lifting of cigarette, that embargo or that lockdown on cigarette sales contributing towards that increase in the share price?
Yeah, lots of uncertainty again. It's also British Tobacco is impacted by our currency. So with currency fluctuations, you also see the share price fluctuating. Just before I went on air, I had a look, actually down at the moment, 1.5%. So it shows how much uncertainty is out there. No doubt lockdown will help them, but I suspect that people would have stockpiled before this lockdown, so you get spike in sales to help them. But ultimately, it depends what happens long term. You know, they are very much a global business, and what happens with smokers globally will be see a decrease in because of COVID-19 attacking the lungs. Time will tell.
Mm-hmm. So mining restrictions are eased somewhat in South Africa, and that's despite the discomfort about how companies are going to look after their mine workers and ensure that they've got safe working conditions. But we're seeing Impala Platinum this morning, Goldfield, Royal Bafokeng, among others, share price plummeting. What's the story there?
Yeah, so I think it's great news that these mines are opening. If you have a look at their locations or where they're based, they're in provinces and metros where there's a very low infection rate, so that's good news for these mines. And the rand is at a almost all-time low. We're trading between 18 and 19 rands per dollar. These mines, if they're operating, they can take advantage of the weak currency to get increased revenue. And we desperately need all that we can get. Share price in general, very, very volatile. Lots of uncertainty, and mining companies are. So it's very much what's happening with the currency, the underlying price they're selling, how it's feeling on things. So it's very much up in the air, and that's a highlight why you also invest, but why you want to invest long term, because long term is less volatile.
Michael Trahan from Vestac Asset Management, thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon. We apologize for that break in sound towards the end of the interview. It's time for a short break. When we come back, we'll have more news about Edcon going into business rescue, Capitec's shareholder, and of course South African Airways seemingly reaching the end of the road. Do stay with us on Point.